Good evening, everybody in the Zoom room and here at the Writers Center. Welcome to Café Muse. Thank you, Michael Davis, for sharing your classical guitar with us again. And thank you, Henry Crawford, for your technical wizardry. I'm Luther Jett, and I'll be co-hosting this evening along with Majna Gama. Tonight's featured readers are Greg Luce and Burgi Zenhaeusern. I will be introducing Greg, while Majda will introduce Burgi. The readings will be followed by a brief open mic for those in the live audience. And there is a sign up in the back, and we may be going out to recruit people. We ask those of you in the live audience, if you haven't already done so, silence your cell phones. Let the words of the poets ring instead. For those of you tuning in on Zoom, if you have trouble hearing the poets, there is a closed caption feature. To use it, look for a box that says CC. That's the closed caption feature. Lord knows what version of Zoom you are using currently and where that little box is, but I swear to you, it exists and you will be able to find it, I know. We've muted your microphones so that barking dogs and laughing children, delightful as both might be, will not interrupt the program. You may, however, use the chat feature to comment. And if we encounter a technical glitch, hang in there, bear with us, we'll be right back. We're encouraging everyone to buy our poets' books. In the live audience, the books are in the back of the room and will be available for purchase after the reading. For you on Zoom, we'll put a link in the chat that will send you to the site where you can place your order. Café Muse is a nonprofit organization with an all-volunteer team. We also encourage you to donate to Café Muse in support of its literary programs. There will be a donation link in the chat also. And now, it gives me great pleasure, and it's an honor to introduce Greg Luce, who was born in Texas and stands as living proof that not everyone from that state is a cowboy. Greg worked for the National Geographic until retirement and is now an editor for two Washington area online journals, the Mid-Atlantic Review, which focuses primarily on poetry, and the recently launched Washington Unbound, which features reviews of new books by local DMV writers. Greg also writes a monthly column on the arts for Scene 4 magazine. Greg is an avid bird watcher and an aficionado of all kinds of music, particularly jazz, but also blues, indie rock, Western swing. He's been an advocate for Tibetan independence for many years. So it seems appropriate to mention that today is the Dalai Lama's 91st birthday, at least in his current incarnation. Greg's poems have been published widely in print and online. He's the author of 6 poetry collections. His most recent release, Smells Like Rain, is a chronicle of redemption viewed from several different perspectives. Rain itself may bring redemption in the form of relief to parched fields on the Western Plains where his mom grew up, for example, or rain can bring destruction. Smells like rain, the central character says in Greg's title poem. Please, Lord, don't let it be hail. I believe that speaker is based on Greg's maternal grandfather. In the following poem, Greg chronicles a disastrous storm that brought hail and tornadoes to wreak destruction on the family farm. The lightning hit Seemed like right behind me. I could feel the jolt. I grabbed you up and run for the house. And just like that, it all stopped. The sun came out. Greg goes on to write of his own journey into the storm, asking, will ink on paper rewater the streams where joy once flowed? And he writes of his Confederate ancestors, posing the open question with which we must all grapple. Can America come to terms with its complicated past and move beyond it, transcend the darkness, and redeem the promise on which it was founded? Perhaps, Greg suggests, music offers one way forward. Or, as the closing poems in the book suggest, love itself that walks into the room when you least expect it. Please welcome Gregory Luce.
Wow, thank you, Luther. That was quite an introduction. You really did some homework. The characters in the kind of the farm setting is not exactly my relatives per se, but they are composite characters of people I know, and some of them who I certainly could have been related to. Anyway, I'm very thrilled to be here. I'm very honored. Thank you to Café Muse for having me, and particularly extra excited because I get to read with the wonderful Burgi Zenhaeusern, whose book I reviewed. Luther mentioned Washington Unbound, so please check that out. And if you need any further information, please see me after the reading itself. So, I'm going to start with a few poems from this new book, and indeed there are copies on the back, on the table there. And I can also, if you contact me directly, if you don't want to get it tonight, but if you're interested in any of my 6 books, I can get them to you. So I'm going to begin. This is actually a poem from my very first book, which came out in 2009. It's called Signs of Small Grace. And I'm reading it just as a sort of way to kick things off, because this is sort of an ars poetica. I feel like ever since, I've been writing for obviously longer than even since 2009, but I have, as you go over time, you start to notice your various motifs, I call them my obsessions. I always tell a young poet, if anybody comes to me for advice, is cultivate your obsessions. But one of the things that works for me is like close observation. This poem is called Just Look. Sunlight falls indifferently among grass and leaves and broken glass and gravel, but the radiance is there anywhere you care to look. Sparks and dazzles fly out and upward, daytime fireflies glancing off the sidewalk and the puddles and the windshields, and yes, your own eyes when you catch glimpses of yourself in the shop windows. And now I'm going to read 4 poems from the new book, and I'll probably come back to it. First one, which Luther was kind enough to quote from, to give you a little taste of it, is called Smells Like Rain. It smells like rain, he says, and she, barely able to reach his hand, looks out across the clear sky at the thin line along the far horizon. Smells like rain, he says, and she, taller now, thinks of rain slanting through the wheat field ahead of the Oklahoma wind. Hearing him whisper, please, Lord, don't let it be hail. Smells like rain, he says, and she, taller still, and with a child of her own, looks at him, shrunken on the bed, eyes half open below his sweating forehead. His sister saying, open the window, child, and the slightest breeze ruffling his hair. Smells like rain, he says, and she whispers, smells like rain. All right, this one is kind of unclassifiable. except maybe just as an homage to somebody who I wouldn't say was exactly a direct influence, but he's a wonderful mid-20th century American poet who should be much more widely read. And he has a poem, the name of which escapes me, the title of which escapes me, but it has the phrase "idiot wind," which Bob Dylan appropriated for one of his songs. So this is called Weldon Keys Walks to the Golden Gate. He disappeared by presumably suicide. It's not fully known, but his car was left in the parking lot at the Golden Gate Bridge. Weldon Keys walks to the Golden Gate, his sad and usual heart dry as a winter leaf. It's Weldon Keys. Will a heart float if detached from the body that carries it? Is the heart a rock or a balloon? What happens when the weight of the body compresses around it? How does it leap into the throat? When the heart sinks, where does it go? Do you still have a heart to break? Could you break it yourself if you had to? Thanks everybody. This one's called No Escape. It's based on my Buddhist practice. No escape. Take one if it hurts, two if it doesn't, because the world is too much. It crowds in with its traffic noise and cell phone chatter, its bird song, jazz and guitar chords, wafting out of cafes, raindrops spattering leaves, its sunlight in unlit tunnels, its mobs on the metro, and solitude in lonely parks, its jagged beauty and encompassing horror. Take one if it hurts, two if it doesn't, because I need to stay awake and feel the pain and pleasure and breathe, however raggedly. Equilibrium is critical, is everything. Right speech, right conduct, right effort. Now, abandon silence, exile, cunning. Take one if it hurts and two if it doesn't. And, Luther also alluded to this in his introduction. My fifth great-grandfather on my mother's side was a man named Daniel Alexander Wood, who was he was a soldier in the Texas 2nd Infantry under General John Bell Hood. He fought in a number of the battles in this part of the country. I have been to the site in Gettysburg where he fought. I've been to Fredericksburg. I've been to Petersburg. This is the kind of thing that if you're a real dyed-in-the-wool Southerner or Texan, you're really proud of. Like, here's this great hero of the lost cause. Obviously, I don't feel that way. It's one of these really interesting things that I have no control over, and I can't say I don't find it fascinating. But as a white Southerner, I feel like we have to sort of account for these things. Just like it was, that's what it was. Anyway, so this is called Ode to My Confederate Dead. I thought about this in relation to Ode to the Confederate Dead by Alan Tate, which I have an epigraph from at the beginning. Now that the salt of their blood stiffens the saltier oblivion of the sea, seals the malignant purity of the flood. I don't own a Confederate flag. No one, I think, owns them. No one, I think, owns one. It owns them. But I do have Confederate blood. But what does that mean, blood? Bloodlines. Do they tell in humans the way they do in thoroughbreds? Rivers and oceans of blood spilled under onto that flag, but some kept flowing through one tiny channel down 4 generations and ended up in my veins. Blood that must mean more than the slightly viscous liquid that circulates in bodies and runs out red when the skin is cut. For surely any Confederate blood I received at birth has long since been replaced, not to mention diluted by my father's cold Yankee blood, blood of small farmers, sailors, and whalers, merchants, blood carrying salt water, rocky soil, lumber, iron ore. But those 2 great-great-grandfathers in gray still march somewhere back behind me, and something connects them to me, so call it blood, call it Confederate blood. And what does that mean, and what do I do about it? Something tells me the Black Lives Matter button on my favorite jacket isn't quite enough. If the salt of their blood has mixed so much and gone to sea, If the flood, however malignant its purity, is sealed, perhaps it's time for one last look backward down the bloodline and then a letting go. Keep me posted on, give me a signal when it's almost time to wrap up. So, sort of continue in the political vein, the social justice vein. This is a poem called Among School Children. I walk my dog through the usual morning crowd of children and parents gathered as usual along the sidewalk waiting for the bus. Bella moves among them, stopping to accept petting and head scratches. We watch when the bus pulls up and the kids run to get on. Another morning in America, land of the free to shoot at will, home of the brave school children who put their lives on the line every day in support of the right to bear arms. Now, I would like to switch to some music poems. As Luther mentioned, jazz is my primary great interest, but I do love all kinds of music. And this poem was inspired by Jeff Buckley. Song's called Lover You. The line that I took comes from the song Lover You Should Have Come Over. Beginning with the line from Jeff Buckley. My kingdom for a kiss upon her shoulder. She dances always, just at the limit of vision, not dancing really, stepping lightly along the wavering horizon, shimmering with last sun or early starlight. She continually recedes, yet always remains, moving. I can see her eyes lit up, gazing in my direction, though whether she sees me, I can't say. If I close my eyes, she's gone when I open them again. She'll come back tomorrow, always beyond my fingers. I have no kingdom. And another music poem. The title of this is Warm Canto, which is this absolutely wonderful, beautiful composition by the jazz pianist Mal Waldron. It's from an album called The Quest, and it features, along with Mal Waldron, Eric Dolphy on, I think in this case, flute and clarinet, and Ron Carter on bass. And this is dedicated to a friend who sort of slipped out of my life, named Emily. Warm Canto. She reminded me of you sitting there in front of the coffee shop, a bit taller, maybe a bit older, still, composed, a small spark in the deep blue eyes gazing straight ahead at a point somewhere between my left shoulder and 100 miles away. I hadn't thought of you for months, but your face appeared now, looking down, half smiling and slightly sideways, your eyes shy with just a glint of élan. Suddenly the street noise diminished. Dolphy's clarinet notes floated gently under Waldron's light-stepped fingerings in the air behind my head. You slipped away abruptly, emailing goodbye. I had no hold on you, neither father nor lover, but you left a little fissure in my chest, which throbs occasionally when I see or hear something that reminds me of you, like now, as I tried not to stare, still hearing Waldron, now in step with Ron Carter's fingers plucking their way down the cello's neck. I want to jump in and give you a couple from my previous book, Riffs Improvisations, which is available for Café Press. And I also have copies over on the table. This is all poems about music, so I want to read a couple of the jazz poems. John Coltrane is probably at the top of my. I could probably actually give you a Mount Everest of Coltrane, Dolphy, Thelonious Monk, and Charles Mingus. But Coltrane, for some reason, is the one I keep coming back to most of all, with Thelonious Monk a very close second. This one is called Train-esque, and it's dedicated to Maura Egan, who some of you might know. She's originally a local area poet who now lives in Italy, but occasionally meet her at AWP and things like that. So this is Train-esque for Maura. The very thought of you, after one evening of talk, cascades through my mind like music, like your hair over your shoulders in the flickering candlelight, as the breeze grew chill and your voice came warm across the small space between us. Your words, too, cascading like notes, like train soloing filigrees. And then another poem about music, get back to this latest book. This is a sort of follow-up to the poems about train, or inspired by Coltrane. Pharoah Sanders is one of his most important, you'd say, disciples, followers. They actually performed together. Pharoah was a little bit younger, and so he learned an awful lot from Train, like so many other young saxophonists. And then he carried on a very, very long and wonderful career. Just died a couple of years ago. This is called Pharoah Sanders Meets Coltrane in Heaven. You built the stairway. I just followed the light and tried to add more stairs. I saw the end of the line you left hanging in the air and reached, always reached, to grasp it, always reaching. I left the end hanging for the next one to reach. And if I have time, I have a couple more short ones to go. These are not in any books, but they have been published. Well, one of them is fairly new. It has not actually even been it hasn't been published yet. I'm not sure it's completely finished, but I'm pretty satisfied with it. This one is another in the series of music poems. This one involves Miles Davis. It's called All on the Floor. Leaving it all on the floor, they say, when a performer has given everything, the sweat, the blood, the very breath. I look at the image of Miles Davis beaten bloody by white cops while taking a smoke break between sets, beaten for breathing while black, leaving some of it on the street. And this is another older one. I'm not sure I think it's been published somewhere, but I'd have to go back and check my records. But it also has to do with rain. One of my obsessions is, again, Luther at least alluded to this, is weather. And having grown up out on the Great Plains, where the weather is something that you are always in, you don't just watch it through the window, you are literally in it, and people's livelihoods depend on, how the weather goes. Anyway, this is called Just After Rain. The scent of rainwater lingers as clouds slowly disperse, and a huge three-quarter moon rests against a deepening blue sky. A few porch lights anticipate the night, but I still have time to scoop a jar of brown water from a puddle on the sidewalk to take home, and hope to find tadpoles, and wonder again if they could have fallen with the rain. Clouds almost gone. The sky stretches out beyond the edges of town. I'm thankful the moon is anchored there, holding me in place. I believe I will stop here. Thank you all. And you're about to get a great treat to hear Burgi. So thanks again.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for your poetry and for your literary citizenship too. I really celebrate that. I'm delighted to introduce our next featured poet, Burgi Zenhaeusern. Burgi is the author of the debut full-length collection, White Door, from Carbonation Press, and the chapbook Behind Normalcy from CityLit Press. She co-edited the translations of the anthology, Knocking on the Door of the White House, a bilingual poetry anthology. Originally from Switzerland, she lives on Nacotchtank and Piscataway land outside of Washington, D.C. To doors and holding them open for others is the first dedication in White Door, both an invitation to enter the world of the poems and a call to accountability that builds with each of the three sections of Burgi's book. There is no aperture so small that Burgi's language will not find a way to enter, nor a way that the page's margins can contain her roaming mind and her curiosity. The poems in this book are not content to sit in one form, such as in the poem Self-Portrait as Grana Tipfel, which can be read both horizontally and vertically. It is also a concrete poem in the shape of a pomegranate. There's even a high bun and a golden shovel in the book, and poems that float like visual collage. Nor are these poems content to even abide by the requirements of English syntax. These poems move so dexterously between dialects, as well as in morning swims, with ancestral memory in the poem stirring polenta, with a young sun and with a mother eagle. There is no romanticization of Swiss life here, though the magic is present in the whir of a spinning wheel, in the cool soapstone of an idle oven. I was struck by the poem called Obedient and its stanzas ending in rigid indentation, and by the Swiss mountain town described as my flat world under a cheesed dome sky. The restlessness that propels the book has its origins here. And yet, I can't translate my origins, writes the poet, at least twice in the book. This is where the polyglot poet's sensory use of language becomes evident. In textual art that is beautiful to read aloud and to ponder over, I get the sense that the poet holds up each word to the light, much like a jeweler engages its quality before sliding it into place. We learn there are flaws of lineage that can't be buffed away or concealed in an attic. The poet's desire for accountability is partially rooted in the American South of the 1960s, where her parents witnessed segregation, yet never recorded it in their pictures or recalled it in slideshows. They return to Switzerland and revert to America with a K, not a C, where there are stories and end myth in well-kept slides. But how does one enter America at all? The poet does so again, older, to raise a child multilingually. White Door challenges us to find a way to live beyond parallels. It opens to the opportunity. Please welcome Burgi Zenhaeusern to Café Muse.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Majda. That was beautiful. Thank you to Café Muse. I'm very happy to be here again after exactly 6 years. And thank you to everybody who is here. And I'm very happy to read next to you. Thank you for your kind words, Greg. And to everybody in the Zoom. And if you happen to be joining from the kitchen, which I do often when I listen to Café Muse, here is a poem that's set in a kitchen. Also in Martha's mind, the Martha from the Bible. To her fury. Martha, Martha. Luke 10:38-42, abbreviated. In the blue shadow of her kitchen, Martha hears. Drop everything, Martha, listen. You're anxious, Martha. Worry too much, Martha. Do too much. Your doing is not learning and does not matter in the big picture, Martha. Doesn't leave anything behind, Martha. Martha, you keep choosing wrongly. You're missing the good news. Martha in the kitchen chops her onions finely, adds salt and pepper to her fury, blew her shadow across the table. She cuts green crispness to ribbons, gauges the cadence of her slicing, the lordly drone next door. Martha in the blue shadow to her fury says, yes, and yes, still prepares the dressing. So that poem is also a broadside, and it's in the back. And for those of you who want to order it, contact me via the website or any way you want. So now I'm reading the poem America, America, Majda referred to. I was like 5 months old when my parents came here on a military airplane from a Frankfurt, a military base in Germany, and we flew here to Durham. America, America. either because their awareness was assumed or the matter a taboo or both. No one prepared my Swiss parents for early 60s Durham, North Carolina segregation. And when a black pedestrian crossed the street in order not to cross, my white, pram-pushing mom with white baby me, she took it personally. Equally clueless, she wouldn't accept that insisting to the black client ahead of her to not step aside was dangerous to the client, until faced with steely refusal, her self-righteousness folded. I don't know how many a black person it took to show her the ways our whiteness mattered. There was no escaping it. Did she wonder aloud in her white circle of recent acquaintances? Maybe she did, or maybe she let the talk lead where it may. Jackie Kay, kids, beautiful Switzerland. The president's assassination. She had some questions of her own. Where to find bread that didn't disintegrate in her hands? Rat and roach poison. Did she mention the paint-stuck windows in their upstairs rental, the grimy trash can turned amanita with a hole in the bottom after a few scrubbings? She must have laughed at the discovery. Maybe they all had a good laugh. Meanwhile, I was likely napping in an adjacent room in my carrier, always brought along, what with the open gas flames, oblivious. She ended up baking her own bread, wrote many letters home, learned to drive under Dad's withering lead, and read to me, nestled in her lap, from a tiny mother goose in her accented English. Grey tones and whites in Dad's photos. They didn't stay, though invited, due to his research on an indigo dye. Pregnant again, Mom yearned to leave. Meanwhile, I had taken my first steps. In Central Park, on Memorial Bridge. Back home again, America reverted to America. Stories and a myth in well-kept slides, cherished showings, none revealing a sign of segregation. It was their happiest time, the only happy time in my parents' marriage. Thank you. And now on to Grandma's Pin, the first poem in my book. 3 silver swallows in flight, a delicate half-moon with a needle, too thick for anything but loose weaves, tarnished as my memory and kept uprooted in my jewelry box. Someone gave the pin to her. Was it her mother or her mother's friend who took her in or offered a job selling notions in her store, or both? After the mother had died of TB, screaming. After the father, a coachman across the Simplon Pass, who liked to play cards and take his daughter along, had already died of the same disease. His big blue Loudon cloak passed on to shield many from the cold, even my mom, his grandson's fiancée, and the only thing of his I ever touched. She told me and handed the pin to me in our language, in the sole keeping of which it is no longer. She told me, and I remember knowing. And now a poem that is set in a very old church in the Grisons, the Alps, in a little town called Ilanz. And it's also about a long gone folk song called Sonja Margriata, which is Romansh, our fourth language, for St. Margaret. The church is Sankt Margareten. I step into the empty nave, the chill of thick walls, white light flooding through unstained glass. The ancient door clangs shut on noon and traffic. My heat and bustle bend to stillness, all beginning in the body. Peeled back from lime erasure, death in celled vaults, lissom, dainty almost, plays chess with a gentlewoman, its delicate fingers clasping her wrist, one last move denied by the hourglass it points to. Or it shoots arrows, holds up a scale, while songbirds are heckling the night owl. From the altar, the view nothing but arabesques. Maybe to draw an erstwhile priest's wandering mind away from the early dark, singing in the pub, lamps sputtering sooty flames, away from the weight of snow, the mountains' unshrinking shadow all winter, the uncertainty of spring. To fix it on the everlasting, when Sonja Margriata, the song, still rang through pubs and homes, the cross-dressing maiden's farewell to her fellow herder, who'd stumbled upon her naked breasts and wouldn't keep his peace, despite her prophecy of dearth to follow in her back. Oh, Sonja Margriata, did you have to make good on your threat? Sonja Margriata, unsaintly namesake, you, banned from these hallowed walls, your winter is not the Lord's. Sonja Margriata, may your frost be short. Faded cornucopias in flower-studded vaults whisper their promise to my right. To the left, death's elfin teasing, restored from Reformation's wrath for decades now, while the evangelists peer down from around a hole in the ceiling, once entrance for the Holy Ghost at Pentecost, a wooden dove. I feel the hush of 1,000 masses, the incense, burner's chain, layered lime, return to the afternoon and warmth. And sometimes when I get back from Switzerland after a summer visit, that's how I feel, back at the pool. Raptors are circling in the clear sky. On a lawn chair, I'm far flung from home, the frayed sense of belonging. Back from being the absentee, dropping my bags in the old bedroom, greeting the horizon like an old friend. It's reassurance whenever I was reminded that I had changed into a guest. Out of sight, a splashing beat, I'm not home. Relief and heartbreak. Each in its spiral, the birds are riding the updraft. And now, as we're talking, this is a bit of a tough poem to read. As we're talking about guilt and innocence, it's a poem that's an ekphrastic on Janet Redman's textile artwork called Ouroboros, yeah, like, and it's in the shape of an accordioned circle, and at the top it has a clasp, like the clasp of a coin purse, and it's wide open, and it's black. It's also on a phrase by Norman Wurzbach, he said in an interview. So the title is on the desire to be innocent, and refuse the desire to be innocent. Norman Wordsworth. The sway of it, though, scream turned inward, accordion, distending mouth to fangless maw for pain and guilt, pushing and shoving, heavy held, at the heart of every I didn't mean it, asking for forgiveness, slippery path on shaky rocks, faltering all the way across, sometimes a beginning, in the longing for full redemption from a rap sheet, the fixation on guilt and ignorance. The desire to be innocent is to be refused deliverance from the lone I, extravagant, protesting, surrender, no surrender. This itself, a confession with eyes turned inward, blindly reaching, drowning your words in this sighing, shrilling accordion, pulled and squeezed, your voice a faint hum at the lip of my hearing. Thank you. And now a summer poem dedicated to the tiger mosquito. It's a concrete poem in the shape of a mosquito's hind legs, and you read it down up. So, tiger mosquito. Tiny banded elegance on my humid skin, hind legs up swung, delicate lashes, we're both exposed. You're my summer yard, its stagnant air, and the itching after our intimate exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Burgi, so much. I'm looking forward to what you produce next. I mean, look at that mosquito poem. That's beautiful. Well, we have time for some open mic. That's next. We did have people sign up. Are there still people who want to sign up? No? All right, well, let me give you our guidelines really quickly. One poem, one page, preferably no AI. Tim Norton, you are our first.
Thank you, readers. I enjoyed listening. Okay, so the first poem is called Ordinary Marvels. The wonders of the world adapt and persist under the demands of the woods, winds, rains, the sun and sky across the surface of the earth. In people, these marvels are less obvious, but they are there. When the land resists the push, it buckles up miles high to be seen and to oversee anything with eyes. Sometimes the forest is lush, sometimes bare. Paths meander across the floor. One could take you where you don't want to go, but you might enjoy the trip, and the trees will protect you from the sun. When the land is worn away for many, many years by an unyielding current, laying there exposed and ambivalent as a canyon. The desert is something to behold. It bakes under the unrelenting sun, but the land is golden there, and the elements found there are purest. A glacier is massive and domineering as it makes its way through the mountains, but when it arrives at its destination, it brings things it carried along the way and melts into a lake, soon to teem with life. When the ground shakes, it is a warning. The land opens up and swallows, shakes, and shatters anything above it. Lava consumes any obstruction, but afterwards there is a fresh landscape that will bloom again. Water carelessly tumbles from a waterfall, but it rises up after it hits the rocks and gently goes on. The ocean, you can swim in the ocean, you can fish and ride waves, sail, and when you look into the ocean, you will see yourself. Most people check the weather every day. Maybe it is to see if the sky will fall or if it opens itself up to the stars. If you don't check, you might not know the forecast. There's one thing in nature that can only be seen indirectly. If you look at the sun, you will never be able to see anything else. Thank you.
Thanks for starting us off, Tim. Our next open mic reader is Bonnie Narajdi.
Hi, my poem is less than a page. By a little bit. Presence. In the middle of my journey through Cornwall on the Atlantic side, 6 hours by train from Paddington, though I was there during a lonely time in January, I grew to like it without meaning to. Standing at the shore near the wharves, taking ferries all day, ordering fish and chips, though you could say a rootless, solitary life can last for just so long. I thought of Ovid, the poems he sent home after he was banished far to the north of Rome at a Black Sea outpost after his urgent pleas to return went for naught. Old man by then, he was reduced to simple gestures in Thomas, which made him the barbarian, not them. His Latin verses being worthless now, he began to enter the language there and realized the people valued friendship, as he said in Tristia. For me, friendship was a small church next to the seawall on a cold and windy afternoon. Opening the rough-hewn wooden door, I saw a kindly gentleman standing near the altar. He was sharing his thoughts about the gifts the wise men had brought. It was Epiphany Sunday. To 3 old people sitting close to each other on a pew, he gestured to me, "Come in, abide with us." Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Luther Jett, you're next.
Independence Day. Let there be no celebration this time. I will drape our declaration with somber crepe. No flags will line my avenues. My music will not be beaten brass, but the song of steel wheel on steel rail, a wail high as snow-locked peaks in that place where the sun lies down at last to rest. Give me fireflies over fireworks. Give me stars that refuse to fall. Do not pray for me, for I am not your prey.
The 4th of July was really tough on everybody in the DC area, I think. I'm so grateful that we could all be here together to celebrate 2 deeply ethical poets who live also very deeply ethical lives and share their poetry with us and are vulnerable and came here together. And I think we're a really beautiful pairing. I want to thank my co-hosts, Luther Jett, Henry Crawford, for helping to put together the July Café Muse program. Also to our founder, Karen Alanier. Thank you to our open mic readers for coming here. Michael Davis for your guitar. As ever, that is a very popular part of the program. Please join us on Zoom Monday, August 3rd for our program which features poetry and translation, hosted by Barbara Goldberg. Get home safely tonight. Stay safe. Read poetry. Go Team USA. Good night.